Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello, NMRA.
I guess I ought to unmute here before I talk. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you come back often and tell your friends about us. We've got a fairly full show tonight, so let me get started. First, I want to introduce Father Ron Walters for our evening prayer. Father Walters.
Creator of the world, as modelers and makers, we recognize the intricacy and the beauty of our world. We thank you for the vision and the artistry that you have given us. Continue to bless us with your creative spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father. We appreciate everything that you do for our show. Thank you so very much. Well, you've heard me say it before. I'm going to say it again. We need volunteers. We need two types of volunteers, or three types, basically. One, we need people to help us on the website. Jim Allen needs help. And if you've got any kind of time or can help us at all, we really need your help. So please give me an email and I'll get you in touch with Jim, or you can call him directly or contact him directly as the webmaster on our website and offer to help him because he really does need a lot of help. Phil and Pat Rivard need help running our shows. They're the only two people that we've got running them. We had two people recently volunteer to help out, and we still need some more people to help too, because it takes two people per show, basically. One to keep track of what's happening on our YouTube channel, and the other one to actually run the Zoom portion of the show. So 4 people sounds like a lot, but it's really not when you figure that we do a show a week plus 2 other shows on Thursday evenings during the month. So we really do 6 a month. And for only 4 people, that's a lot of volunteer time and a lot to ask for volunteers. So if you can give us a little time to help, maybe once a week for the month, that would be so appreciative. And again, my email is jimkello@newtracksmodeling.com. The other thing we need is we need a CPA to make sure that our foundation for the scholarship fund properly accounts for all the money and makes all the proper reports to the IRS so that we stay out of jail. And we want to try to get a CPA that can help us and guide us doing that part of the program. So if anyone out there is a modeler and can help us in that regard, again, my email is jimkello@newtracksmodeling.com. I want to take a moment and thank everybody for the donations they've made to our Patreon account this year. The Patreon account this year is not deductible from the IRS because we didn't have the 501c3 this year. So the deductibility for the scholarship rests in the separate company that we established, and we haven't started collecting money for that yet. We won't probably start that fundraising for the 2024 scholarship until probably mid to late August of this year. But as far as the money needed to run the show, that we collect through our Patreon account. And thank you so very much for everyone that's donated already to the Patreon account and to the people that may be able to spare a little extra here and there. We sure would appreciate anything that you can do to help us fund the regular Zoom shows and the cost of running those. Our scholarship, we're taking applications now. The end of the application period is June the 30th. So if you have a child, a grandchild, know of somebody, if you could tell them about our scholarship, if they haven't already found out by going to one of the shows around the country, we sure would appreciate that. Next up, I want to ask if anybody is going to the NMRA National Convention in Dallas, Texas, August the 21st to the 26th. If you are, I'd appreciate it if you could let me know, because we're trying to get some information. We tried to find out from the NMRA who's attending the convention, and they won't release that information to us. And we have some information that we want to provide to the people that are going about the clinic that we're sponsoring at the convention. But we can't do that because we don't know who's going, and we don't know who then to send the emails to. So if you're planning to go, if you could let me know, I sure would appreciate it. Modeling lifestyle, we need your help on that. We don't have one this week because the person that we had scheduled, we had to postpone because they had a problem come up in their lives. So we had to postpone them. So rather than talk about the lifestyle that we're going to be doing this week, what I'm going to ask is if you have somebody that we have not featured on one of our modeling lifestyles that you think really is making a contribution to our hobby and should be recorded in our hobby for the future, please let me know, because we'd like to make sure that we've included as many people as we possibly can and make sure that we're not missing somebody. And that's why we want all of the viewers to help us make sure that we don't miss somebody by giving us somebody that you think we should honor by being the guest on that show every other Thursday night. The build along's coming up. The last one before the summer that I've got scheduled is Bollinger Edgeley Best Trains. They're offering 4 different basic kits. You can get whichever one you want. He's going to be showing you how to build all 4 of them. He's even including the shingles for the roof in it as an extra for the people that buy the kit. And I think it's going to be a real fun build. It starts May the 31st. And after this one, then during the summertime, we're going to concentrate on scratch building. And we've got quite a bit of different things that we're going to be doing about scratch building over the summer. And then we start the fall season in September with William J. Walters and their houses that Gary Shergold, MMR, is going to be building. But Gary is going to be building it. And I promise you, you'll think that it's not plastic kit that he's built, but it's a wood kit or with a stone foundation when he gets through with it. And I think that's really going to be special, and that's going to kick off then the build-alongs that we'll do starting again in this fall. The My Build we have coming up, I want to introduce Chris Course. It's on May the 24th. And Chris, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thanks, Jim. All right, the next My Build is May the 24th, like Jim said. Let me pull up the slide here. I forgot to pull up that one. I grabbed the other one. But in the meantime, don't forget our June show. We are featuring summer. So we're going to aim for a water theme for that. So if you have stuff to share that is somehow water related, whether it's bridges or beaches or something along those lines, please bring it to our attention. Email them to me at railrunner130@hotmail.com, and we'll get those on. And let me all right, we're up to speed here. Okay, the next My Build is May 24th, 2023, and it's pretty much a free for all. So whatever you've got, whatever you're working on, whatever you found that's cool, please share it, and we'll get it on here. Maybe it's something you need help with. You're not quite sure about something. But anyway, let's see. And then there is the slide for June. The water challenge shows your boats, your bridges, rivers, lakes, ponds, beaches, that sort of stuff. That'll be June 28th also. And again, email me photos, railrunner130@hotmail.com. And especially if you have not participated in the past, please send us your photos. We'd really like to see what you're working on, see what's going on in your modeling world. And also, if it's your first time, please send us a photo of yourself to include for your introductory card. All right, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it. How's the barge coming?
Actually, we had some progress this week. Finally, we've got a good printed front end loader.
I'll be darned.
Yep. Finally.
I'm looking forward to seeing one of those on the June 28th show.
I hope so. I hope we get there.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Yep.
Well, now I want to introduce David Vaughn. David is the president of O-Scale Central. And the reason that I asked David if he'd like to join us tonight, I'm going to start this later this year, a segment once a month on the different scales. So each week I'm going to have a segment. 1 week it'll be N scale, 1 week it'll be HO, 1 week it'll be S, and 1 week it'll be O. And I had talked to David about it, and he recommended David Schultz. And David today agreed to do it. So later this year, we'll be starting one of these once a month. And it'll be about O-Scale, what's happening in O-Scale, the modelers that model in O-Scale, and who they are and what they're doing, and issues they're having, and manufacturers that are in O-Scale, and where's the hobby of O-Scale going, and what is O-Scale? So anyway, that's what I started talking to David about. And then I asked David to come on the show and maybe talk to us a little bit about some things that I think are important that you may be interested in. So David, welcome. I think you're muted, David.
I think, hello.
Yeah, that's it. I hear you.
Good. I think 33% of all of the effort that we expend online is getting people who are muted, unmuted, and getting so everybody can hear them. I apologize for my delay in that regard. First of all, I want to thank Jim Kello for the work that he is doing to lend excitement to the hobby and encourage people to participate. This is not a spectator sport. This is a get out and do it. And Jim has been a real voice for doing that. We are particularly appreciative of that in O-Scale because O-Scale 2 rail does not have the same level of visibility as some of the other scales. But we are, if we are the few, we're also the proud. And we are particularly excited about being in O-Scale because of the detail that you can get, because of the mass you have, and because of the ability to build and enjoy building models in O-Scale. Like a lot of other folks who are in O-Scale, I started in other scales. So I've done N, I've done HO. And I assure you that there is not nearly the level of satisfaction in those smaller scales if you are working on models. That becomes more so if you're going bifocular, as a lot of us are, and as you're looking for new challenges in your modeling. O-Scale 2 rail is a real place to go. We have a scale-wide organization to promote O-Scale 2 rail and to support modelers who are working in the scale. Go to O-Scale Central, spelled just like you would think, .com, and you will find an orientation into 2 rail O-Scale. You will find a scale-wide product and service guide that will enable you to figure out what is available in O-Scale. And you will find links to other places, clubs that do O-Scale, shows coming up, and you will find links to the upcoming O-Scale 2 rail convention, which is going to be held in Denver in June 8th through 11. We've got some exciting clinics going on there, including a presentation by Soundtracks for their new Blue Nami, which is, it was like it was designed to be used in O-scale. Katie, which has historically been an HO-scale company, has not only come out with couplers, a full line of those, but has now come out with a full line of HO freight trucks. They'll be displaying them for the first time when we're in Denver at the national convention. There'll be a really exciting bunch of cutting edge clinics there. And that one is reached either through the O-Scale Central website or through the parallel oscalenational.com, which is our convention website. It's going to be at the Hyatt in Aurora, Colorado. Take a look at what's going on the program. On a shorter term, one of the things that O-Scale Central does is to sponsor a monthly or so O-Scale Central online program. Historically, one of the leaders in O-Scale 2-Rail has been Atlas, and MTH has either gone out of business or modified its program. It has sold a number of its lines to Atlas, which are now being marketed as the Atlas Premier line. And on Saturday, we have Andy Edholm, who was basically the COO for MTH, who is now working directly with Jared Hadrick and the other people at Atlas. And he's going to tell us about where we've been, what's going on with MTH, what's going on with Atlas, where things are now, and perhaps more importantly, where Atlas is going in the future. Obviously, there are some complications with China, with supply chain, with COVID, and so on. But we're hopeful that we're working through that. And the guy we're going to have as our interview on the program, Andy, is probably the best guy in the hobby to give us that information. So we got a lot of stuff going on in O-Scale 2-Rail. We appreciate the opportunity to plug it on this program. Jim Kello talked about the NMRA National. Two things going on there. Number one, we're going to have some O-Scale themed clinics. We're going to have a switching layout in the special interest group room. And Jim, if you're looking for somebody as a contact there, I'm going to be going to NMRA in Dallas, and I'd be delighted to work with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, David. And the one thing I do want to say is this show that David is talking about monthly. I've been to not all of them. I missed the last one, but I've been to the others. And I've really enjoyed it. You learn a lot. You'd be amazed at the information that comes through with the Zoom shows that they put on. This one on the 13th, this Saturday, is at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And to get the login link, David, can they contact you, or I can give them my email and I'll send them to you if you want to do it that way. I hate to publish your email.
Yeah, why don't you do it, because your audience is already plugged into you.
Yeah. So if you'd like to attend this Zoom show live, and I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun, and you'll meet a lot of different O-scalers there. At least I have, that I'd never met before. My email is jimkello@newtracksmodeling.com. And if you'll just tell me in the email that you want the Zoom login link, I have it. So I can send it to you, or I'll tell David and make sure that he knows that you want to come to the show. And then from then on, we can make sure that you get on the mailing list for the future events. And you do not have to join the organization. This is open to all O-scalers. Regardless of what organization you belong to. You don't have to be an NMRA member. You don't have to belong to anything. But if you're an O-scaler or you want to learn about O-scaling, this is something that I highly recommend that you consider. Excuse me, David, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jim. I appreciate the plug. A couple of things that sort of follow up on that. One is this O-Scale Central Online as well as the scale-wide product and service guide and the other things we offer through our website, are done as a service to the scale. These are not restricted to O-Scale Central Web members, although we hope that you'll look at it, figure out we're doing good things, and you will support us. But this is a scale-wide, just like Jim Kello works as a service to model railroading, we're trying to do the same kind of thing in the scale. And some of our inspiration, in fact, for the things that we do online, we got from watching New Tracks and the things that Jim has been doing. So thank you for your support. One of the things that happens if you can't make it to the Saturday 3 p.m. Show, we record these, and after they are edited and formatted, they wind up on YouTube, and we probably get 2 or 3 times as many people on the recorded programs as we do go on live. So thank you very much.
Where do we look for them on YouTube? What's your channel?
Beats me.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked.
I can send you the link, and if people ask about it, you can pass it along, and it is available through central.com. I just apologize, I don't have it with me. It's about 50 characters long is all I remember. But
I understand. David, thank you so very much. I appreciate you so much being here.
Thank you. I'm going to have to jump off because I've got an 8 o'clock Zoom call in another group, but I really appreciate your time. You will find that David Schultz is going to be a wonderful contributor over the years. He's on our board of directors and is just a really good guy. He recently retired as an engineer, fully, that is a 12-inch to the foot engineer. As soon as he gets through his wife's due list, he's going to be working way more actively with both New Tracks and other stuff for us.
Right.
David,
take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now I want to introduce somebody else that I just recently found out about. His name is Frank Duder, and I'm not sure, I haven't checked. I'm not sure if he's here tonight. If he is,
I'm here.
And Frank belongs to a club. I'll let him tell you about it. But his club is doing something that I haven't heard any organization do before. And I was so impressed when I found out about it. I invited him to join us and maybe talk about it a little bit tonight. So Frank, thank you so much for joining us, and tell us what's the name of your club and what's your program here.
Thanks for having me. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, I am with Cordry Company Crossing Model Railroad Club in Snow Hill, Maryland, and I kind of run it now. We're working on getting our 501c3 nonprofit currently. So we've been doing a lot of different events, especially for kids, showing how to run trains with kids. And about 2 years ago, when I was in college, before COVID and all, I started a little train camp for kids and invite the kids up there, show them how to run the trains, how to maintenance the trains. And it's really grown now. And yeah, we brought it back this year. So the idea is to bring kids up there, get their parents to come up there with them, and show them how to run the trains, get the parents involved. And last time we did it, we actually recruited 2 guys to our club, and they both had kids. And those kids are building their own HO layout now at DZC. So it's really cool.
I was really impressed when I heard about that. I've posted it on my Facebook page, and we'd like to have you back. Phil Edholm is the host for what we call local clubs and NMRA divisions. And it gives the local club and a division an opportunity to really go into depth about what they're doing and so forth. Phil's going to be in contact with you, Frank, and invite you back to be on his segment.
Sounds great.
Thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it, and best of luck with your program.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Couple of other things, and then we'll get on with our show. The Association of Professional Model Makers is having a Zoom show on the 18th of May at 12 p.m. Eastern time, or Central time, I'm sorry, 12 p.m. Central, about the Carlsbad, California Museum. A guy by the name of Joe Martin is responsible for bringing Shareline lathe equipment to the U.S. market. And this museum, is a relatively small museum in California, specializes in the scale machines and that kind of equipment. And one of the things that they have in this museum that I find fascinating is a model by Louis Chanot. It's a 1/6 inch scale, 1932 Duesenberg. It's got 6,000 scratch-built parts, and it operates. And he built it from scratch. And they're going to be showing and demonstrating the model on this Zoom show and showing the different scale machines that Shareline had over the years and so forth. And I thought you might be interested in it. If you'd like to attend that, if you'll send me your email, jimkello@newtracksmodeling.com, I'll make sure that you get the login link for that Zoom show. Two other quick announcements. Later this year, probably late October, we'd like to start a monthly, once a week scale segment. So 1 week we talk about N scale, next week we talk about HO, next week we talk about S, next week we talk about O, so forth. And Dave Schultz has volunteered to do the O scale for us. I'm looking for N, HO, and S scale modelers. So if you would like to be the host for those segments, be once a week. It would be about what's happening in that scale, why people should enjoy that scale, what's happening new in that scale, who are the modelers, and the interviews with the modelers in that scale and what they're doing, and the kinds of things that you can accomplish in that scale. Please let me know. Jim Kello, newtracksmodeling.com. Last thing I'll say is Campbell is closing as of May the 13th. Their website shuts down. I don't know if anybody has bought them. The only information that I have is that they're closing their operations and going out of business. I do not know if anyone is interested. You might want to contact Campbell. Otherwise, Campbell, after 63 years, is gone from our hobby. Also, Kapla is also, I understand, for sale. So if you're interested in that lumber company, you ought to contact them because we sure don't want to lose them to our hobby. Well, with that said, let's start our show. Sorry about all the announcements, but I thought all of them were important to try to pass on at least to you. So I'd like to go to Father Ron Walters, who is again going to work on an Inkscape 3D process for us to show us how to use that technology in our modeling. Father Walters.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. And here we go. So what I'm going to do is show you how I use this to sort of draft what a chapel I found online might be for a model layout. The chapel is called Capilla del Sol, which is Spanish for Chapel of the Sun or Sun Chapel. This is the painting or photograph, I don't know which, that I found online. It's a very small thing. And one of the things that I wanted to emphasize here about this is that chapels traditionally were little places along the way when people went from one place to another. And for many centuries, the way they did that was on foot or horseback. And so you had to stop frequently for yourself to rest from your walking or to rest the horse or mule or donkey or whatever it was that you were using. And often these places were an idea of a place where you could pray if you wanted to, or rest. Some of you may remember, if you've read the book of Genesis in the Old Testament, that Jacob did this very thing when he camped out for the night and had a dream. And the next morning, he built a little altar to commemorate the place. He saw that place as a kind of sacred place. And so chapels were that kind of thing. Most of what we encounter today are churches, which are built for many people to go to. But a little chapel was often something that people would build on their own land for visiting priests or others who might be coming by as a place to pray. I'm not sure whether, like I said, I'm not sure whether this is a painting or a photograph. You can look at the dog down there, and the dog certainly looks like this is a photograph. And so does the background. But the building itself looks like it's a painting. But it's small. You see there's only 2 windows on the side and a front entrance. It's not really meant to be a place for, a congregation to gather to worship. It's made out of wood, very simple. No foundation that I can see on it. It's just built right on top of the ground. It's wood shingles for the roof, and it's meant to be a place to stop by on your way somewhere, or perhaps a place for a family to pray on their own land. See if I can go to the next one here. So I made some assumptions about building this building. 2 sides are all that's visible in this painting. So I'm going to say that there's no windows in the back. And the other side of the building is the same as this one, only reversed. Doors are usually approximately 80 inches tall. And so the front doors on this building I will look for a tissue set of double doors that are approximately 80 inches tall. Obviously, what we need for this is the size of the walls and the gabled ends, and you'll need to figure out a size of windows. So that's some of the things that is going to be needed on this. For the walls, I looked for my own collection of models, and if you remember, not a long time back, we had a build along of this Banta Model Works. Basically, it's a freight station. And it's a little bigger than that, but you can see that the side walls and end walls, the end walls are gabled, and it's got side walls. So as far as what are the size of the walls, well, this is a good place to start. I have the kit, so I got my scale ruler out and measured the side walls. They're longer than what's necessary, but I could measure the height of the wall and use that as a standard for the height, at least, of the wall, the 2 side walls. The gabled end, again, is about the same height without the gable on it, so that all I have to figure out is how wide or how long the walls will have to be. This includes a window, a door, and a freight door on this one side. Obviously, something that has only 2 windows won't necessarily need to be this long. So I figured that I would estimate that this little chapel probably is at least half the size of this Banta Model Works model, or perhaps 3/4 of that size. So we'll see as we go along what I did to figure out how long the side walls are going to be. So the height of the side walls is 10 HO scale feet, or approximately 35 millimeters in height. And I use millimeters when I do modeling because they're a lot more accurate than trying to read the inch markings on the HO scale ruler. If the length of the new side walls is half the length of the warehouse walls, they would be approximately 16 feet long, or 55 millimeters. If the length of the new side walls is 3/4 of the length of the warehouse walls, they would be 24 scale feet, or 83 millimeters. So I'm going to make two mock-ups in Inkscape, one that will be the half length of the warehouse wall, and one that will be 3/4 of the length of the warehouse wall. I will look at those then and see which looks about right. Actually, in modeling, it's probably better that something looks very close to what you're modeling, especially if you can't measure it. And since this is either a painting or a photograph, I can't measure it in reality. So we'll see what it looks like here. These are the gabled end walls. Of course, the lower half that's not gabled is going to be the same height as the side wall. So much more has to do with how big the triangle on top of that wall is going to be. This shows a door and a window, and probably enough room for a second window if you really wanted to put one in on this warehouse. And what's going to govern the width of the Capilla del Sol is going to be the doors, the double doors. So I can use the same proportions to determine the width of the gabled ends of the Capilla del Sol. So half the width of this gabled end, or 3/4 of the width of the gabled end. So 9 scale feet or 12 scale feet, 31.5 millimeters or 41.5 millimeters. So again, I will draft two different buildings in Inkscape to reflect those, to see which looks closest to the painting or the photograph. This gives you the two basic sketches here. One that is half the length of the side wall of the warehouse, and one that is 3/4 of the length of the side wall. I created rectangles is basically what I started with. I created a rectangle that was the same length or the same height and 3/4 and 1/2 of the length. And I showed in the previous Inkscape demonstration how to create a rectangle. The end walls, or the gabled ends, I use the same thing. So you can see that the two rectangles that I created for that, and I just duplicated them and laid them out. The tricky part comes when creating the triangle that sits on top of the gabled end. In order to do that, you have to use the pentagon star symbol in Inkscape, which I'll show you in a minute, to create that and to then sit it on top of the gabled end. Now, in Inkscape, you can merge those two figures into one figure, but since I'm not quite sure exactly what's going to look right, I'm just going to put them together and group them. I showed how to group symbols or the things that you create in Inkscape in the last episode. So I'm going to group these two together for now. I can ungroup them later to change the width of this building if I need to. Looking at these two, just as the way they are, the shorter of the two looks about right for this Capilla del Sol. And so I'm going to concentrate on this shorter one here rather than the longer one. The vestibule for the front of this, I'm going to do some guessing here because, again, I'm going to look at what looks right at the end. So again, I'm creating rectangles, this time vertical rectangles instead of horizontal ones. So how tall should this vestibule be? It is certainly taller than the gabled end. If you look at the picture, the painting or the photograph. And so I'm going to start out by guessing that it is the height of the gabled end, which is the height of the side wall plus the height of the triangle that I created. So 19 millimeters plus 35 millimeters equals 54 millimeters. And that's where I began as far as the height goes. The width of these is going to be determined by the doors that I'm going to use for the model. And so I'm looking at, basically I have to go to Tishy, to their website, and see what doors, double doors are available. And this will help determine the width of the vestibule that sits in front of the actual body of the chapel. They're not very deep. And so that's the other side of this. If you're going to create this vestibule, how deep do you make it? Obviously, the doors are going to have to open outward. And so the front door of the building, that doesn't matter because it's going to open out into the world. But the inner door, which we're not going to build, I'm not going to build, will have to be opened outward also. So the width of the vestibule will have to be at least the width of one of the two doors on the front of the building, because inside would have a double door as well. So that's going to determine the width of the vestibule. And so I went online to Tishy and found a door that I liked. And in this one, you can see the door here, which determined half of that. Online, Tishy gives you the exact measurements of its double doors. And I found one that looked like it would be a good one for the front of this building. It's number 8124. The actual opening for the double door is 16.74 millimeters by 24.765 millimeters. So half of that will be the width of the vestibule. Now, obviously, that's making an assumption that when you open up the inside door, you're going to hit the front door. So it's going to have to be a little bit wider than the width of one door. This can be adjusted later, and you'll see that when we get to the end, things don't look very good or look right when I put this all together. The top of the gabled end of the vestibule is very small, but it's certainly the width of the front where the front door is going to sit. So I can add something there and guess at it and see how it looks. So I went to Inkscape and I began to work with the triangle. And here's where I would explain how to use the triangle shape. You're going to use the pentagon, and it's a combination of a pentagon and a star to the left of the Inkscape. And you can see the symbols. There's a red square, then there's a red circle, and the third icon on the left is the pentagon and star. Before you create using that icon, you're going to have to first click on it and then change the number of corners that you want. You want only 3. And so the orange arrow is pointing to where you're going to have to change the number of corners. And so I changed it to 3. Obviously, I've done this before. You can see some of the images that I have there in the gray portion of Inkscape. So I created a triangle, and you have to make sure that the bottom side of the triangle is level. When you create the triangle in Inkscape, it wanders all over the place. So you have to look to make sure that the bottom side of the triangle is flat and even and straight. So you click on the pentagon star and you change the number of corners to 3 and you draw a triangle. And so you want the vestibule wall where the door is to be 24.765 millimeters wide. And that's what you'll use for the width of it. To change the height, I didn't know how much, but if there's going to be any kind of an opening there, you're probably going to need at least 2 feet. And so I decided to make the height of the triangle on top of the vestibule wall where the doors are to be 3 scale feet. Then I duplicated all of that, but I created a second one without a door in it. So that's going to be the inside wall that will face the rest of the building. I know I'm going a bit fast here, so you can look at this again later on the NewTracks website. The matter of how tall the roofs are going to be is going to have to be something you're going to have to measure after you've created your drawing. So you can see in the top picture of Inkscape that I have created a triangle on top of the gabled end. So the height of the roof is going to be one of the 2 sides of the isosceles triangle. And so you're going to have to measure one of those sides to know how tall the roof is going to be. To the left of the drawing there, you see I created a rectangle already. The length of this rectangle is the same as the side wall, but I haven't determined the side yet because I need to measure the triangle, the side of the isosceles triangle. So in the lower picture, you can see that I've used the measuring tool, which is what the orange arrow in the upper picture is pointing to. That's the measuring tool. So once you've clicked on that, you place your arrow, one part of the line you want to measure, on top of the place which you want to measure. So I don't know whether you can see my cursor or not, but I'm pointing to it right there. You place one of them there, and then you click with your mouse, and then you go measure to the top of that side of this isosceles triangle, and you get a measurement. And in this particular case, the length of that side is 24.28 millimeters. So that's how tall this rectangle has to be. Then I can place it on top of the side wall, duplicate it, and place the duplicate on top of the other side wall, which will give me a roof that will meet at the proper point on the building's roof. So here in the top picture, you see the image that I've created for this building. And this is just the side wall, right? The sides and back of the main building. This is not the vestibule yet. So I do the same process for the roof of the vestibule, measuring the length of the isosceles triangle here, using the measuring tool and measure that, create a rectangle that will sit on top of the width of the vestibule, duplicate that and put it on top of the other rectangle. So now I have the vestibule and the building itself. I can cut these out I can print this, cut out these pieces, and then tape them together to see how they look, which is what I have done in the top photograph here. And you can see that after putting these two together, it doesn't look right, which is part of the reason why I use Inkscape, because now I can make corrections to my drawings, by separating the pieces, widening or narrowing things, lowering them in terms of height in order to make it look closer to what it needs to be. So you can see by comparing the two chapels that they aren't quite the same. Obviously, this vestibule is a bit too tall, so I'm probably going to need to lower that. But before I do that, you can see that the width of the gabled end is too narrow. So I'm going to have to widen the gabled ends of the actual building, which will lower the height of the building, and then I can then lower the height of the vestibule accordingly. You can also see that there's a bit too much room here between the door and the end of the wall of the vestibule. So I can narrow that a bit as well. But that's the advantage of Inkscape, is that you can change things without wasting wood or plastic or styrene or whatever it is that you're going to make this out of. You can change things there and print up another sheet of paper, which costs pennies, and you haven't really wasted much, which is the advantage, I think, of using Inkscape to do your modeling. So that's my presentation for this evening. I know I went a bit fast, but this has been recorded, and those of you on YouTube can basically go over that again. So I turn it back over to you, Jim.
Father Ron, thank you so very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. This is a real education. Well, now I'd like to move to our next guest, Tom Yorke. And Tom, I can't thank you enough for doing this. We kind of brought Tom out of his, I guess, semi-retirement to make this kit and to come on the show and not necessarily show us how to put it together, but show us how to paint it and weather it. So Tom, I'm really looking forward to this, and thank you so very much again for all your help in this project.
That's fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This will be a rather interesting presentation because my Krylon white spray can doesn't work anymore. So I wasn't able to spray all the walls. But we're going to do this building. And what I've started with is just the basic structure, which is right here. I've already put some paint on it because it takes a while to get it to dry. So what I'm going to do, this is a brush I'm using, which is a 1/2 inch sable. And I've already mixed up some stain. Let's see what we've got here. And what you don't want to do is to go over it once the paint is on, because it will pick up the paint that is underneath it. So you just put one coat on, and if you use a large brush, it goes much faster. Let's see, the stain that I have is very thin. Okay, let's do this wall.
Hey, Tom, what is the stain?
Okay, it's basically acrylics.
About what's the ratio with water? I'm assuming you're mixing those with water to make them into
Yes.
like a stain. Kind of what ratio do you typically use, do you think?
A lot of water and a couple of drops of pigment. Not very much pigment. Okay, I've got that. And what I'm gonna finish the front for you. I'll
Is,
say
is that,
put the
is
white
that a
on.
brown pigment?
I'm using, let's see, that dark brown and water. I'm going to add a little bit of black to it on the next coat.
And this is going over, you pre-sprayed the
Right.
Hydrocal with a
No,
Krylon
it's resin.
prepaid, but you prepainted the resin just with Krylon then,
Yeah, that's Krylon white
just Krylon white. Okay, cool.
when it works. Okay, I've got that. This is what happens when you don't have Krylon white on it. And I'll attack this later. I'll do a thicker stain and we'll see what works on that one. I have to let that dry for a while. What I'm going to do is attempt to do the base, which is concrete. Let me see, I need some gray. Okay. I can't tip it up to show you because it'll spill all over. But I need to. And this is not the way you clean a brush. But it is for right now. Okay, now we put a lot of water. And I'm going to use just a little bit of white. Assuming I've got some left. Just a little bit. Very little bit. Just a little bit of white. Now, if you can get a concrete color, then you can go with that. I don't have that. I just have gray and white. Let's see whether that will work or not. Yeah, it's going to have to be thicker because there's no come on, go. There's no paint on that one. And if this one doesn't work, we'll do this next time and we'll go on to something else. I like these plastic egg trays to mix paint in. Let's see if I can get that on there. It's going to come a little bit, but yeah, it's going to have to be painted white. Because the plastic is shiny, and when you paint it flat white, it makes it dull, and the paint adheres to that. So we're going to have to do that one later, because that one's not going to work right. Okay, let's continue. I'm going to use Just a touch of black. That much brown or black. Let's see what we've got. Okay, that's pretty good. No, we're gonna have to. Not quite dry yet. It usually takes about 6 to 7 to 8 coats of stain to build it up enough. But it's actually very simple. Let's see if I can. Now this is going to have white paint over it. So if there are little specks of white that are still showing through, it's not going to harm anything because you'll cover that with the white paint. Okay. That's about what we've got. I'll have to go back and darken some of the boards once it's dry. If you do it while it's wet, I say it's going to pick up the paint that you've already put on. So it needs to be dry for each coat. And I just paint a few boards, darken a few boards. Could be a little bit darker. Ugh. And it's a trial and error system. Let's see what I've got here. Try to put it on that way. And I'm not worried about this door because this door is going to be covered with metal. Now what I like to do, the bottom of the wall has more water damage on it, so it's darker. And so I just paint a little more on the bottom. And we're going to need a little more black. Let's try to get. You try to paint it darker on the bottom of the wall where people would touch the door or would kick the door. And I can use the smaller brush. This is a 1/4 inch. To try and paint a few okay. Dun, 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 dun. That's getting there. If it would just dry, that's the hard part.
How long do you typically allow between stain layers for dry time?
Usually about 10 minutes. But I don't have that here. There we go. Now we've got some darker on it. And this part of the building is not going to be painted, so the brown is important. Because that's going to be your final color. That's getting browner. I usually keep it upside down, let it run a little bit. And I can paint a few boards darker. Okay, let's see if I can get a little more on here.
Do you just use straight water or do you put anything in it to cut the surface tension so it doesn't beat up?
You can put a little bit of soap in it, but if you put too much soap in it, it's going to make bubbles. So I just basically use water. Once the model is sprayed white, and flat white, it takes the stain perfectly. I had a little problem with the white this time. Okay, if we can let that dry. Yeah. Let's see, let me talk about brushes too. This 1/2 inch sable is what I use for most of the what I call brown undercoat, because it holds a lot of paint and it coats fast. I wouldn't use a brush like this to paint the wall. And this one is more of a detail brush. And this is a 1/4 inch sable. Now what I do use is this very little one to paint in the cracks. And you can do that when the wall is slightly damp, because capillary action will just draw the darker color in. unfortunately, it's going to take a while to dry. Let's see. Mm. If
Tom, if you got a hair dryer, it would help.
it's in the other room. This is what I will use to paint the white.
Mm,
Now, this is a bristle brush. It's much stiffer.
yeah.
And I use this, I will use full strength paint and I will stipple it.
Why don't you wait till next time to do that, Tom? Because there's no point in, rushing through this. I think what you've done is a pretty darn good start.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, well, that's probably all I can do right now until it dries.
That's fine. Then why don't we stop tonight and pick
And
it up next week?
I'll spray this white and I will spray this one white when I get a new can.
I got you. I
And
got
we'll go on from there.
Sounds like a winner.
We'll complete the front wall on the next time. And that should work out.
I think that's great. I think that's a good place to stop.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next week.
All right.
Thank you. Well, now I want to move to Mike Davis. And Mike is a rather young modeler for our show and talks to us about the attitude and the viewpoint of young modelers and model railroading. So Mike, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you for having me tonight, Jim.
Yes, sir.
As Jim said, as Jim was saying, main thing I want to talk about tonight is sort of an observation of mine. I'm 26 and been in a train since I was 5 and model railroading seriously since I was 12. And I've listened to, and I've heard the phrase, the hobby is dying from many people, but well, they've been saying that for the past 50 years and it's still around. One of the things I also keep hearing popping up every now and then is clubs, both modular and ones that have like a permanent layout. They always are wondering how to increase membership or how to get more young guys to sign up, get more young guys to participate. And the thing I've noticed is that they usually don't have a problem getting more young guys to sign up. It's getting them to stick around after they sign up is where the problem usually arises. Now, straight out of the gate, you're going to have a hard time. There's some guys that are just not going to stick around no matter what. They sign up because they're excited, but then they realize that it just doesn't jive well with their schedule, or they get busy with school and other stuff, or they have parents that just are not supportive, or they're over 18 and parents are an issue, but they still have other things they got to do, like school or work. But for the ones who don't have that issue, I found and have learned that the number one thing that tends to chase off a lot of younger guys is an issue. Issue is that it's what I like to call curmudgeon syndrome. And what that usually is where you get an attitude of older modelers who just they're grumpy old men. They look at the young guys and just find them annoying, obnoxious, make snide remarks about them behind their back, and just overall sort of, without even trying to, give off sort of an aura of contempt towards these younger guys. And here's the thing. A lot of younger guys, I will admit, they can be a little bit of a handful at times. I was probably one of the more obnoxious ones. But I also think that a lot of the issue is a lot of younger guys just don't have, they're just never given any direction. They're never given anything to do. Like they try and help out on a club function, but instead of being shown, okay, well, here's what you can do and how you can do it, they get boxed out basically. I think a lot of it is fear from the older crowd. They're worried that, oh, if I let these young guys in, they're gonna wreck it or ruin it or change it in a way I don't like. And so as much as they want them in, they're so afraid of it being damaged or harmed that they often don't don't let the young guys touch it. And what that does, it kind of creates a feeling in the younger people that of not feeling welcomed. As far as what a lot of clubs can do to fix that, I think the issue is take the younger guys under your wing. Take them under your wing and teach them what you know, or give them a small project, something to channel their energy. Because the biggest issue is the young guys tend to be full of energy but no direction, and that energy can be overwhelming for older modelers. But that energy can be managed if they're focused onto something. As what happened to me in a couple clubs when it came to looking at scenery projects or the electrical. Like one club I'm in right now, I get tapped to do all the electrical related building projects as well. That's what I do in my free time. But the point is, I'm directed towards something that encouraged me to keep going with it. And I noticed that the clubs that have the fewest issues retaining young people tend to implement the stuff I mentioned. There's two clubs I'm a part of, one in the Bay Area, one in Southern California, that have a higher average of younger modelers than most other clubs. And the one thing I noticed that they do that other clubs don't is they do more activities that engage the younger crowd. And it tends to have they both have a more of an encouraging attitude than a unwelcoming attitude. Anyone got any other inputs or insights or questions into this?
When you say,
Michael?
Yeah.
I have a question. With engagement, is it have to be engagement of doing something that a group is working on, or can that engagement be in the form of almost instruction, clinics?
I think it depends on the people involved. Both are an acceptable answer. It's there's really not a one size fits all way to do this, because some of the younger guys very much into working with groups. Others, including myself, don't play well with others. Don't play well with others as much. So if you were to give me something, go here, I need you to go, do this thing up in that closet and go do that. It's like, okay, I'll come back in about 3 hours when it's done.
Okay, thank you.
Another thing I just remembered. One thing clubs can do to really engage younger modelers is embrace the electronic era. Because I notice a lot of people in my age group, they prefer using cell phone throttle or using cell phones as throttles as opposed to that. And the new technology can be a little scary, overwhelming for some older modelers. But at the same time, if you were enable the use of like cell phone throttles or running trains off an iPad or a laptop, that can help them stay in. Also, it knocks down a potential barrier to entry, which is one of these is expensive, especially if it's got wireless. However, most people have parents that have bought them a smartphone, or most people can fork out the money for a smartphone, even they can't fork out the money for a DCC throttle. And we all know this hobby is really expensive. I oftentimes, actually not even half, it's only half a joke when I tell parents of like younger guys in the trains, we're talking like, less than 10 years old. I tell them, you want to keep your kids out of trouble, get them or further their interest in model trains. You can't afford to get into adult trouble when you're spending all your money on model trains.
Michael, do the younger people, are they into model building, or what part of the hobby do they enjoy?
From what I understand, mostly running trains. They tend to be much more attracted to the RTR models that are available. But I do know a couple young guys who do like to do painting and they do like to do kits and scratch building, but they tend to be way more the exception than the rule. Most people in my age bracket, they want to pull out of the box, set it on the tracks, and let it rip.
Are they interested in just running the trains, or do they want to do prototypical operation?
Dealer's choice.
As long as the train's on the track, they're happy.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, freelancing tends to be a very attractive thing for younger because, well, when you have only a corner of your bedroom in your parents' house, you can't exactly build yourself that dream Union Pacific layout. But there are some guys who are into prototype modeling. I know one guy is like 15 who is very much into Pennsylvania era steam and runs something accordingly. And he managed to speed match a couple BLI Pennsy steamers, which I still want to know how he did that. Seriously, I think he slaughtered a goat to make it happen.
Are the young modelers into actually building layouts, or do they want to join clubs, or, you know, with lack of space and so forth? I imagine it's kind of difficult for a young guy to build a layout. So
they are. Again, that one's, I think, also a dealer's choice. Some guys really want to build a layout, but they just don't have the space to do so. I am a very lucky exception that my house had a whole second garage built onto it before we moved in, and that's basically been my domain to play with my stuff. But a lot of other guys just don't have the space, or they might be able to build something in like around the walls of their bedroom that's like a foot wide, wrap around 2 walls. A couple guys just have a small diorama. And a lot of them tend to go to clubs to run their stuff because they just don't have room at home. Another big barrier for younger guys is they get parents who don't quite get it. They're like, why would you spend that kind of money on a toy? My parents, I'd say get it. I mean, they're kind of like, well, I don't understand half of what you just said, or actually even a tenth of what you just said, but you seem to be happy, and, well, I'm not having to bail you out of jail, so have at it.
Are the parents, were they ever model railroaders basically, or is this something brand new to them?
It kind of spontaneously happened for me. None of my relatives were really into trains. I mean, I think a great aunt and her husband played with Lionel way back in the day that they later dumped on my lap because they're cleaning out space. But no, my interest started from my uncle buying me a $4 Brio set when I was like 4, and it's only blossomed from there. But I think the biggest issue for a lot of kids is they tend to, like, I got a couple friends who told me that when they try to, that their parents cannot understand why they spend that kind of money on trains. They just don't see the point. Heck, had one friend invited another friend of his over, and when that friend started opening his mouth, friend number 1 or 2 friend number 2 started talking about, the price of stuff, the actual price of stuff in front of friend number 1's parents. Friend number was like, dude, shut up. I'd become a real freak if she found out how much I was paying for this stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a big issue, is parental support can sometimes vacillate considerably depending on who you're talking to.
Anybody have any more questions for Michael tonight?
I think a club or a group that's going to be successful with getting the young ones in is going to have a little bit of discipline, a little bit of awareness of, hey, there's new guys here, new guy coming in, or he's a kid, and don't bark at him. That's what I see. If you have a group of guys that are just into it themselves, it's just not. That's a clique. That's not a potential model railroad. If it's a clique, the kid might get in or not. The other thing is to really work on getting him in there 2, 3, 4 times. He'll get used to the gruffness. Maybe he'll pick it up. I mean, look, how many of us came up through a club or a group where there was a couple grouches in there that might tell us where to put it. But after 6 months, we tell them where to put it.
That's actually a pretty good point. One thing I've noticed about model train clubs is they can get tribal pretty fast, and also became kind of a good old boys club, which, I mean, model railroading kind of just lends itself to that. But Fran here was right about that. It's like you got to tell some of the grouches, hey, dude, cut it out. It's like you're the reason the young guys keep running away. I was in one club way back when I was an obnoxious 9-year-old that my mom stopped bringing me to because a couple guys are just saying some pretty vicious things about a 9-year-old kid when I wasn't listening. But my mom heard that, and well, yeah.
And if you can't control that in the group, hopefully there's someone in the group that can go to the parent and say, hey, here's a great place to send your kid, to
Pretty much
to another place that would be a little more friendly.
Yeah, and I agree. Sometimes you just can't fix those guys. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. However, if your club is big enough, hopefully you can corral them into the corner to give the young guys a chance to actually establish themselves. I like to say, wait till I open my mouth before you bite my head off. Don't just assume I'm going to be a problem. Wait till I actually do something worth getting on my case about. It's like, don't jump to conclusions, because that just causes problems. One measure I try and do with younger guys in my club is I try to go out of my way to encourage them to come back and to keep running stuff. Like in my modular club, we had a couple new guys interested in, but the problem is they got a bunch of cars but no DCC equipped engines. So I said, well, I got more locomotives and common sense. Just use one or two of mine for the evening. And I said, don't be afraid to ask. I'm one person. I got like 10 locomotives with me tonight. Even though last shift, I'm only going to use about half of those. Some of them I just bring in case the ones I want to run give me problems. But on top of that, I'm also taking a couple locomotives that I don't want anymore, but I don't think I'm going to get much resale out of them. When I throw a cheap decoder in, I'm going to give it to these kids and go, here, you no longer have to borrow one of mine. Here's here's an engine for you. Take care of it. Something like that could be a very, very positive experience for a kid and really encourage them to come back. And on your point of, don't be grouchy, at one club down in Pasadena, I was helping with their Christmas open house, and they got a pretty impressive standard gauge layout. They also got a narrow gauge setup, and I was working the narrow gauge room on this particular night. And this adorable, she couldn't not have been more than 3 or 4-year-old girl comes in, and I could tell she just wanted to touch everything. Not in a malicious way, but, just how kids are. And I was about to go, hey, don't touch. But I remember, I've been on the receiving end of that, and it's not fun. It is very jarring. Even if you say it as softly as possible, it's still jarring for a kid. So I'm thinking, okay, think outside the box here. I just softly said, hey, do me a favor, put your hands in your pockets, please. And she did. She put her hands in her pockets. I had to keep reminding her every 30 seconds, but it worked. She stopped touching stuff, and I wasn't that guy. Eventually, I figured out that, she's not going to be happy until she's able to, manhandle something. So I grab a cheap boxcar I've got that's got pretty sparse and thick details. So I go, here, wanna look over that? And I let her, manhandle a little bit. She drops it. It's like $10. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But either way, a lot more modelers, especially in clubs, need to have that kind of attitude. It's like, be gentle on the young ones and be gentle on the new ones. It's like, not all of them are trying to break your stuff. Some of them they're in an unfamiliar environment. They've never had the chance to interact with other model railroaders before and don't understand that you're jumpy over that brass caboose for a good reason.
Mike, I can't thank you enough for being here this evening. I look forward to your next event with us, and thanks so much for sharing your thoughts.
And thank you, Jim, for having me tonight. It was an enjoyable experience. I will catch you next time.
I'm glad it was. I think I learned some things from you, and I really do appreciate your frankness with us.
I appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully you gleaned a couple things that will be useful.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Mike. Well, now I want to turn to Tom Farrell, who is scratch building a layout. And I think tonight you're going to learn how he's built some street scenes, some roads, just a bunch of stuff for his automobile tunnel. I mean, he's really moving right along. So Tom, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me this evening again. And sorry I missed last week. I was in transit in the air. So let me share the screen here. Okay, everybody can see this. Everybody can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Well, for the first time, this is a photo of the new rustic buff and old Gothic railroad. All the previous photos were of the old layout because I didn't have anything far enough along to show off to the folks. So this is the first scene that I'm doing in the new rustic buff and old Gothic. I call it Brady's Bend, after a small hard scrabble town north of Pittsburgh, my hometown. And this features 3 scratch built buildings. And will be the focus. So we'll move on here. First thing we're going to do is look at this the block walls, little misspelling there. This is a close-up of the concrete block wall that's next to Sanford and Son, the business you just saw. This is Monster Works laser etched wood for the block. There's an upside and downside and orientation to this material, and simply cut to size here, primed, and then weathered with a variety of acrylic paints and chalks. The signs are all from PowerPoint. Phil did an excellent job the past couple of weeks, or a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, explaining how we get these period-based signs. I'm going to show you how I made some of this stuff. First is the fence. This is all scale lumber. One of the nice things about working in O scale is, a 1/4 inch is equal to a foot. So I put these on 1 inch widths, which are 4 feet. The uprights are scale 4x4s. The posts are 4x4s. The horizontal bracing are scale 2x6s. That's a single piece that runs the length. So this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 inches long. Those are 11-inch strips. So the first thing I do is glue the 11-inch strips to the vertical 4x4s. Then I take 1x6s and I chop them on my chopper to the height that I want. And I don't cut them before I put them on there. I just glue them all on there, and then I clip them with rail snips, the tops and bottoms, and rough them up. This is halfway through the weathering process here. But fences are really easy to make, and they add a lot of great interest to the layout. This is my sacrificial plastic pen. I needed to make drains for the front of that wall. So I took this pen and I cut it on my little micro mark saw. I cut them at length and super glued them onto that monster board concrete block. There they are, painted black on the inside, flat black, and then painted first an enamel, a rust color, and then I put acrylics over the enamel, and then some chalk. So again, it costs nothing to do this. And You can see the weathering on the fence up above. You know, there's weathering chalks on there and washes of alcohol, and the overall effect is pretty realistic. Now we're going to get to the hardware of the layout. If anybody recalls in case you were wondering, my layout, you know, just had these profile boards that had no contours to them. That was by design, because since the design's in my head and I do it as I go along, I didn't know where the profiles would be. So it's kind of the way I work, even with those scratch built buildings. I have no plans, everything comes out of my head. And I like it that way. It's all freelance. So I freelance everything I do. And I think it makes for a more realistic, for how I model, more realistic modeling. Because anyway, so I had to put these profile boards in. They are the same width and material, MDF material, as what's below. I just took I think this was a 1x6, and I just cut it to length, and then I drew a profile on it, and I cut it out with a jigsaw. It's test fit here. What I did is I drilled the holes on my drill press to fit dowel rods, pretty substantial dowel rods, roughly, I don't know what the diameter is, roughly 3/8. And so I pre-drilled the profile board, and then I lined it up to the finished fascia there. And with a marker, I just lined up. And then with the hand, I just followed the pattern. Put the dowel, took that paint that, see where the marker is, there's green finished paint. Took a very rough sandpaper, and I took that paint off down to the primer, and then I glued it with tight bond glue. Filled those holes with, not completely full, but put enough glue in there that when I stuck my dowel rods in there, I was sure they were covered with glue. And then I put the boards in place, and that's first painting. There's a second. They're now finished, but this is not a current photograph. But it all looks pretty fresh, and this is a blend of two photos, so it's not really how it looks. But it is very strong. You'd think it was all one piece now, and it looks just fine. Now I want profile boards all around the layout, because I don't want the trains to fall off the ledge. So this is the finished side of the profile board. So this is the inward side. So in the corner, I put this tunnel, this automobile tunnel, and that's an N scale tunnel. I obviously had O scale, I had narrow gauge tunnels, I had an HO tunnel. I technically needed something in between an N and HO, but I figured I'd just use the N scale, since I have tons of N scale stuff from previous, that was my previous scale. I thought I'd incorporate that into the corner of those profile boards you saw. And then to the left and right of that tunnel is more of that monster board concrete block. And then to the right side, I made a retaining wall, which, if you recall from a previous video that I did, simply has a backer board. You lay the wood on, and it's a simple process. And everything about this is simple. It's just a question of patience. And I was going to have the same wood to the left of the tunnel as well, but then it looked like a ballpark or a stadium. So to the left, I put a stone wall, or I put the concrete block, and then I put Sculpt-A-Mold on there and showed that it was basically a cut through stone. And for variety, I put a railroad tie wall down in front of the turnouts. So overall, I'm very pleased with how this looks. And you can see some of my weathering to the rails. This is that Pico track. I rust the rails inside and out. You can see on the left, bottom left, I'm sorry, the bottom right photograph, bottom left track is unrusted. The right side is rusted. See what a dramatic difference it makes. I paint the just everything with acrylics, nothing fancy there. Okay, the concrete road and tunnel scene. You already saw some of the tunnel scene, but this is how she looks with the car in place. And this fella's obviously run out of gas with his car. Good thing he didn't stall his car on the tracks, because that could be a disaster. You can see how it's a nice little scene, and it adds a lot of visual interest to the layout. And I'll show you how I made that concrete road. The first was, of course, to determine where it's going. So this is an early photograph of the 3 rails. The first 2 are my double track main line. The back is a siding that leads up to the Moonshine Distillery and runs right by the Sanford & Son structure. It's a little trick that I dreamed up on the spot. I wanted to cut the profile. This is on a curve just to make it difficult to put in the concrete road, because I'm going to use monster board concrete cracked road material. It's a thin, I don't want to call it a cardstock. It's like a masonite type material, an MDF material. Anyway, I was trying to figure out how I was going to get that profile, and I thought, let me just paint the tops of the rail black with an acrylic paint, which I might add easily wipes off. Then I took my monster board concrete cracked road material, and I simply pressed firmly on there, flip it over, and there's your profile for cutting. And I just took my X-Acto knife and ran it along the inside of that mark that I made with the paint. It worked perfectly. It fit exactly. So here we see on the left, I have a base paint on the concrete highway. I went for my Floquil again on this, the old school paint. I didn't really want to put an acrylic, a water-based paint on this material. I thought it might warp. So I went with a solvent-based paint. I even went to the trouble of sealing the backside with a Floquil flat. I just wanted it to be impervious to moisture damage. And then on the right, after the Floquil was completely dry, I put black alcohol washes on that material. And then I took a colored pencil. It was a special artist color pencil that basically it's water soluble. So I just scratched in imaginary tire marks, you can see in the bottom left, and some black chalk. And then as you'll see later, on that left photograph, that's in its raw form, where I just scratch the concrete with the pencil, and I'll blur it later with the chalk and the paintbrush. You can see on the right where I'm going with this. So I did that second piece, and then the third piece, and then the fourth piece, and today I just finished the fifth and sixth pieces. I don't think I have a full photograph of the whole thing. I had to do the middle here, so the cars aren't rolling over the railroad ties. So I removed the ballast, which I used a dental pick. It just came right out in minutes. And then I I'm going to lay basically a 2x6 across there. I'm going to bring this up to the level of those spikes that you see in the enlargement there, in the red. So I put a drop on each tie of cyanoacrylate, super glue, AC, and then I laid this scale 2x6 across there, and then I put super glue on top of it. And then here, so here's the entire process. And I dropped in this concrete piece, which was made the same way as I blackened the rails again with paint. Then I set a piece onto the paint. Then I cut it out with an X-Acto knife, and then I sanded it till I got the right profile. I did round the corners on 2 of the 3. The first one, it didn't occur to me that I didn't want to catch a wheel or flange on a sharp corner. So I had to go back and sand round corners on the first one I did, which was somewhat difficult because it was down into the tracks. But pieces 2 and 3, I pre-rounded these corners. Then I super glued this into place. And I ran freight cars across it, passenger cars, and then I cleaned everything off and ran a locomotive across it. There's absolutely no clearance problems. You wouldn't even know it was there. So there on the left is pretty much how it looks. I think that is in fact the finished picture. I had to build up the scenery to the left and right of the highway. I debated putting curbs in it on Sun's street sidewalk. And I thought, no, I don't want curbs on this. I'll just go straight concrete. And it's a nice product, it has a nice effect. And if you look to the right there, the right photograph, it's a nice little scene. Really came off well. There's the scene again with I dropped in a sky, so you wouldn't see the wall, but yeah, just a nice little, very realistic scene. And you just have to be patient with this material. I have to figure out what the hell it is, but it's some sort of MDF, real thin material, but they just have excellent products. This Monster Works, they also call themselves Larkspur, Larkspar, but Monster Works is their model railroad line. And that it's a close up there of the end scale tunnel, concrete. I mean, it all works really well, I think.
I agree. It's absolutely beautiful modeling.
Tom, is that car coming out of the tunnel? Is that half a car?
No, it's a whole car, but I had to go through all my cars to find the shortest one, because a couple of the ones that I actually really wanted to use, I thought there might be clearance problems with the train going by. So it won the prize because it was the shortest car in my collection. And I got to weather that radiator there. It was like, for some reason, it was like bright plastic red. So I just quickly painted it black for this photograph here, but I'll go back and weather that radiator. But the rest of the car is weathered really nicely. And I mean, it tells a scene. I mean, when you get a visitor and he sees that there's nobody in the car, somebody standing next to it, cleaning his hands off with a rag, and he's got a gas can. I mean, that's what makes you think, and that's what gives you the realism. You start thinking about, oh, this guy must have run out of gas and blah, blah, blah. It just makes an interesting little story.
I'm wondering where you're going to use the second half of the car.
Oh, it's still there. It's all there. But that's a good joke, yeah. And there's the whole scene right now. Next time I will feature some close-ups of the sidewalk sale that's going on there at Sanford and Son, and that rock wall is completely, stone wall in front of it's completely finished. It came out really nice, and I'm going to move over to the Moonshine Distillery. That structure's just sitting in place right there. It's not really in yet, so it's persistence. Just keep building the scene one component at a time, and it's starting to look very realistic, though. Yeah,
I agree. Tom, thank you so very much. See you next week.
Yep, thank you.
Well, now we've got something special, I think, for everybody. We have a person who is a farm modeler, who is a really special person, special individual, Chris Steeb. Chris, welcome.
I actually do both.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Doing fine tonight. Enjoying what I've heard so far.
Well, listen, I really do appreciate you being with us tonight. I've known you a little while. I wrote an article about you in S-Scale Resource magazine a while back when I first found out about farm modelers. And since I think you've won just about everything, if not everything, that the farm modeling community has to offer, I couldn't think of anybody better to come on the show and to talk to us about farm modeling and, frankly, the S-scale model railroading market.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, yeah, I have won every major show we have multiple times, twice at our nationals. It is a growing hobby on our side. Like I said, we have on an average, like nationals this year, had almost 40 displays or dioramas set up. Mine had a chunk of track, or had actually a main line and then 2 siding tracks on it because it was actually a co-op. You might attach to your website the link to the video. That unfortunately that display is not set up right now. It is still in the trailer where I brought it home because I don't have room for it until we actually make the move to Oklahoma.
Chris, let me ask you this. When you talk about your part of the hobby being really going well right now, who are the farm modelers? Are they younger than model railroaders, or about the same age, older people? Who's in this hobby of farm modeling?
Oh, I'm the old man in it at the age of 46. The majority are the junior high through high school, early college age that are still involved in 4-H and FFA because they do have a pretty vigorous competition over there that can get you some scholarships and such. Most of them are kids who might live on a farm and want to have a display that is the farm they wish their farm was. Others are kids that are in the city that know absolutely nothing about farming, but love the whole concept. Like I said, out of those 40 this last year, there was actually only 10 of us in the senior division, and 30 of those were youth, which is actually 17 and below. And like I said, each one of them grows each year. Like I said, we had just a Lafayette Farm Toy Show, which typically has, I think there was almost 50 displays there. Out of the 50, 20 of them were adult, and that still put the same 30 in youth. The YouTube has definitely helped us with the videos that Jason at Toy Tractor Times has done of my displays, has opened the market to the youth side of it and got the kids really interested in doing this kind of stuff. I commonly get to a show now and have to set up, and I do a question and answer and autograph session with kids that, like I said, that have been watching the videos for years now. This year will be 10 years since I won my first nationals. And like I said, it's interesting. It's great to see a lot of these kids who started out with a display at the age of 7 or such, and are now, 17 or older, and, like I said, are still continuing to make each display better and better.
Chris, are they modelers? Are they building these displays that you talk about? I mean, is this open a box and just put a bunch of stuff on a table, or what is a display to these modelers?
Oh no, a lot of it has to be built. There, as you know, in S scale, unfortunately, right now there is not a lot of new stuff to be had that's not sitting in people's collections, and there's not a bunch of modern stuff in most of your farm displays, because a lot of, when you start talking younger generations of kids, if you think back even in vehicles we used to drive, when you think about a 30-year-old pickup, in yours and my mind, we're thinking of something that was built in the 60s. Unfortunately, that's not anymore. And when you're talking, something antique to a kid in the farm world, I mean, stuff that's commonplace to me and you, they've never even heard of or seen. I mean, so yeah, no, it's like I said, a lot of it's scratch built. They have to, for our competition, the level that they're in, a lot of it either has to be scratch built. There's very little to be bought. The tractors and stuff can be bought, but then from there, typically to win now, you have to take what is a high detailed tractor and then weather it to actually stand a chance.
When you talk about the modeling that the kids go through, we hear in model railroading, the young people that come into model railroading, basically they're not modelers. They don't want to model. What's the difference? I mean, it's both S scale and there's scenery in model railroading the same as there's scenery in farm modeling.
Oh, exactly. I think the biggest difference is we have no movement. So, whereas the debate you guys have on whether they show up to actually run the, their DCC setup, or whether into actual, deliver car A to warehouse B, we have none of that. Ours is all basically just a picture in time. So you are trying your hardest to take your layout like the one I'm standing in front of, which was my 2021 national competition piece, and make it look as realistic as possible. It was not this cluttered at the show. I mean, I've got everything sitting on it right now because I do a weekly blog with it, which a lot of the adults and kids do, called Model Farm Monday. Right. And which is basically you just make a storyline of what is happening at this farm right here, is actually called Hat Creek Ranch, like it's realistic of what the people are actually doing that day. And like I said, that's about as much movement as we have, and that seems to keep an interest. There's on Toy Tractor Times every Monday, there's typically 20 to 30 different layouts that are shown on there with what they've got going on at that display that day.
So really what you're saying, what I understand you to say, is that we could take one of the farm displays and put a S-scale locomotive and cars and the rest of the layout on it, and it would be a scale model railroad.
Exactly. And like I said, there was a lot of interest with me actually having some track on this one, and a static locomotive and cars that kids, with the gates and stuff. Oh wow, I never thought about that. And I, sat there and go, yeah, but how many of your farm fields do run right alongside a chunk of track right away? Or, with me, I'm doing the edge of town going into town, so I needed railroad. Like I said, yeah, it very easily, you could incorporate track into this and have no problem whatsoever.
What's the holdback? Why isn't S-scale model railroading and farm modeling, why aren't they closer together?
The biggest reason is, and I'm working right now with American Models on bringing back out some of their stuff they ran very limited, which was I think the SD60. There's nothing today to be bought. You don't see F7 locomotives running downtown, Des Moines, Iowa right now. I mean, so it doesn't incorporate to what kids see and know. They, this day and age, they know about 4 road names. They know Union Pacific, Burlington Northern, Santa Fe, Norfolk and Southern, and Canadian National, Canadian Pacific. And that's, basically anything they know. They may have seen one steam locomotive parked, in a museum or in a park, but, or their grandfather may have taken them down to see one because they're neat. I mean, the nice thing about me being in Michigan half the year is I can go down, and I've actually had the opportunity to run Henry Ford's steam locomotive but that's the closest I've ever been to one. And that's the biggest problem is outside of them and, you know, a few things that Des Plaines Hobby's doing to try to bring some more modern stuff in the hobby. There's really nothing to pique the next generation's interest in the rail side of it to stay with what we've got on the farm side.
Because they just don't see the modern stuff. They don't see it available for sale. They see it in reality, but they don't see the model.
Correct. I mean, we've had some in ways with the 3D printing availability now. I do have a few friends, like I said, that are working on printing some modern grain hoppers and adapter kits for some of the stuff like Pacific Rail shops that are out there to make them look like modern cars. But that's pretty much the extent of it. I mean, the S-scale world gets all excited when somebody announces that they're doing a beautiful bay window caboose. You tell a kid of 12 years old right now about a caboose and they just become a deer in the headlights. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, because they didn't have any. Yep, I understand. So what's the solution in it, do you think?
God, I don't know. Like I said, that's why the biggest key is I'm working with a couple of the manufacturers. We're trying to pair American models with a corporation I've done a lot of work with that's Top Shelf Replica, who is a S-scaler as well as a 1/64th diorama builder. And he wants stuff and needs stuff. And we have, at Top Shelf, we have no interest in trying to reinvent the wheel on the marketing side when it already exists at another place. So, but the one advantage we have over like working with American Models, they're a great company, but even their manufacturing ability is still on their side based out of the 1980s, maybe 1990s, of where they actually, do a true pewter poured, prototype and hope it came out. And, I'm working on a project for them where I literally told them that it's a project that they've all been talked about doing forever. Their packaging is already ready for it, and they just could not get a engineer to design it up. I turned it over to our 3D engineers, and we had a prototype ready for them in under 36 hours that we can now 3D print and put them right into production. So, like I said, it's just a matter of, like I said, the two sides of the hobby with technology. There's a lot of stuff on this layout that I couldn't have had 10 years ago since the advent of 3D printing that I now want something specific. We can now 3D print it instead of trying to sit here like I used to with 1,000 tiny pieces of brass or styrene and actually scratch build it. And I don't mean so much the buildings and such, because those are still kind of big for what a person can have a homeowner 3D printer, but that's coming too. I have upstairs on the workbench a Quonset hut, basically the same as this one, that is completely 3D printed. And instead of, when I used to scratch build one of these for a guy, you were talking about $250. That one I bought from and of all things, a 15-year-old kid who has his own printer. He was able to do it for $26. And I talked to him straight up about the fact, are you cutting yourself short? And he goes, I've got about $7 worth of material and about a half hour of time invested of designing this. So that's one place, like I said, where your one young man talked about retention for members. The one thing you guys could really look at embracing is the 9 to 20-year-old kids, because they're learning in junior high how to 3D print you something. So if you want something specific like a Shea locomotive in S-scale, if you got the kid interested, they could pretty well design it in about a week, and you'd have one on your layout or your display in about a week and a half.
That's just hard to believe. And I don't, you're the first person I've had on the show that's talked about that.
Yeah, like I said, it's an easy thing. These are, perfect example of, that's something that I used to, if you can see it, I got it lined up right, build out of brass that, it now is 3D printed and it takes no time. So, and a guy, not only does it take no time, a guy can press enter 7 times and have them for you, as many as you want.
But we keep hearing 3D printing is just not possible to produce locomotives and cars and structures. It's too slow. It can't, you can't make any money from a manufacturing standpoint.
Oh no, whoever's saying that is, you can 3D print in brass now. So you literally could make an Overland brass locomotive 3D printed, and all the detail pieces will already be pre-attached as it came out of the printer. We do it in the farm hobby side all the time. It's nothing new for us. I have 50 or 60 friends who, out of them, I know 10 of them specifically who have paid their way through some major universities doing 3D printed for the hobby. And the nice thing is the problem with like S scale is if you really ramped up and you talk about all the S scalers that are out there in the world right now, I would be surprised if the number would top 200 people. So that's not really something worth going into full line production for 200 people. But whereas 3D printing, you could do those 200 kits or 200 finished models and sell them without a problem. A perfect example of that, I know you tried to get him on tonight, but he had a work problem, is Tony Dixon doing, I think it's an SW 1001 switcher.
Yep.
I mean, that's something we didn't have a year ago. The first one was on my national display, and it was done. And so that, like I said, and you don't have to worry about American models sitting there going, well, is it worth an investment for us to run this 5,000 units and for them to sit here? Which in the manufacturing side, 5,000 units is a small run.
Right.
But I don't think there's 5,000 S scalers left, if even 2,500 for them each to take two.
Yep. Yep. I understand what you're saying. You make a lot of sense. And, the funny part about it is, I think the reason that you guys in the farm modeling are doing this, you're dealing with a younger group of people than model railroaders.
Oh yeah, by far. I mean, like I said before, I mean, I'm one of the old guys in it. I mean, there's a few older than me, but with our age, life gets in the way, and a few of them, as they will get closer to retirement, will come back around. But I mean, the problem with our side of the hobby is the guys who have come back to it, the stuff that they know before static grass and before scratch built trees and in the 3D printing, they still do some beautiful work, but they can't compare to a 10-year-old kid who's watched the videos and watched the railroad videos and is now knocking it out of the park. I mean, that's the interesting one, is the next group of kids we've got coming up because of the videos. Their displays are as nice at the age of 10 as mine was 10 years ago that I won my first nationals with. So I look forward to the amazing stuff that they can do.
Chris, somebody told me that to compete at a national level, an adult national level display is going to run you $20,000.
Actually, I think that was me right after you did that interview, because the display I had that year with 3D printing at that point cost me almost 20 grand. But that cost is really, because it used to be when our only source was you'd contact a designer, he'd make you whatever you want. That would cost $120 roughly. And then from there, you had to send the file over to Shapeways because they were the only game in town. And it would cost you roughly about $120 minimum to print that item. Now, I have a printer upstairs that, so I may have that same $120 investment, but it costs me 75 cents to print it. So the price has come down, but it's also like anything in either hobby, depending on how much detail you want to do and what you're doing. I mean, after we did that interview and somebody gave me a bunch of grief, I actually did a 1/32 display as a budget build that was the same size. 1/32 tractors cost more and combines cost more, but it was just a wheat field that I had into the board and the static grass and all the scenery in it, maybe $100. And so on that display, I kept my receipts because I had it set in a book. I had spent less than $1,000 to set a beautiful picture in time that you could have done in 1/64 or HO. I mean, when the biggest sites that I follow on, YouTube and stuff are some of the guys, like your man that just showed the beautiful bridge and edge work. That's the stuff that we're trying to incorporate that, like I said, you don't have a lot of investment into. The investment in our display, and that's where I try to get, Kids Go Simpler is in the scratch built or custom built farm toys, where you can easily spend $250 to $1,000 the same way as you can with an Overland brass to try to make it exactly that. But you and I both know you could open the package on a prototypical one from Walters and weather it up a little bit, and at a distance, it looked darn near as nice as that Overland brass.
Yep. Yep. You're right. You're right. It's amazing. It really is. What are your final thoughts, Chris? How in the world do we ever get our hobbies close together? How do we interest the young people like you have, and at the same time get the products that both the S-Scale modeler, how many ever of them are out there, and the S-Scale farm modelers that can use the railroad equipment? How do we ever get them what they need?
Well,
how do we get them together? I mean, together as a market, they've got to be much more attractive.
You would think the one that I worked for years and years with Woodland Scenic to try to get them to bring some of their HO and O-scale kits to, not kits so much, because their figures. Their figures were the big thing we were lacking in this hobby for the longest time. And I told them, and I showed them the data on, like, Toy Tractor Times has 25,000 members. And I showed them that, said that this is feasible, this can be done. They did not want to listen to me at all, because their statement was, the big problem is the stigma of S-Scale, of, American Flyer. Everybody, as soon as you talk to like Woodland Scenic, their statement is American Flyer is dead. And I try to convince them it may be, but 1/64th diecast is alive and well. And worldwide, I mean, you can check out some of the people out of Malaysia and such. They're doing small little 12 by 12 dioramas that are gorgeous, which made it so I was able to talk to American Dioramas and say, hey guys, this is some of the stuff we need. And they had no problem producing it. And it was such a profit maker for them that they've now continued the line. And almost every month they release 4 to 5 new sets of people. The big factor is, and we've got that problem in S-Scale, is somehow, some way, and I don't know if it'll happen or it's just going to happen through attrition, we need to get away from, make some people mad, but we need to get away from that American Flyer, concept, and we need to get over to scale concept.
I understand. Chris, thank you so much for being here tonight and joining us. I can't thank you enough.
No problem. Anytime.
Thank you, sir. Well, that's it for our show this evening. I hope you enjoyed it. We'd like to close with our caboose section. And we want to thank Pat Rivard for providing the caboose for us this evening. So until next time, happy modeling. Hope to see you next Wednesday, same time.